Welcome back, everybody. The FBI now ranks Texas second in the country for losses to internet crimes. According to its latest report, Texans lost more than $1.3 billion to extortion, data breaches, and phishing scams, and that is up from the year prior.
So we want to bring in Juan Rosales, a community banker at Amplify Credit Union. Juan is here to give us some really important ways that we can protect ourselves and also our money online. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
Talk to us about what are the most common things you're hearing from folks you work with about these types of schemes and scams.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that we see, and probably the most important one, is people get their text. People get texts telling them that they have an unpaid toll or an unpaid invoice, and a lot of times it gives them something to click on. One of the things we always recommend to our members and people that we interact with is don't click on those. Some of those are not necessarily true or valid. Just do your research a little bit more when it comes to those. If you don't recognize the number or the information that's coming from, ask a couple more questions.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I just got one of those texts this morning and I looked at the link and I said, ooh, this doesn't look right. So it is so prevalent.
Yeah, so pesky and so common. But what role does artificial intelligence play in some of these schemes that are popping up lately?
So AI is actually something that we haven't seen much interaction with, which I think is something that is definitely going to be better for us. AI is definitely a scary tool that is out there that is definitely going to be, when it does get involved in fraud, can be something to keep an eye out. But what I always like to remind people is do your research when it comes to the interactions that are coming from unknown numbers, unknown interactions. If it is something coming from your financial institution, reach out to them, call them, just verify everything just to make sure, and talk to a person on the line and be like, hey, this is what happened, is this legitimate?
Never be afraid to pick up the phone and give
100%.
your actual financial institution a call. Okay, over the years we know we have seen criminals, scammers target older people who might not be as familiar with maybe those text messages or online portals, things like that. We do want to note the latest FBI report we saw, people over 60 suffered the most severe losses, but people in their 40s were actually the ones submitting the most amount of complaints to authorities. So talk to us about what you're seeing. Are you seeing or hearing from younger customers who might be targeted by some of these scams?
So the same thing, because everything is so focused on easy access for the scammers, so text, emails, and we live in a generation where those are so much more involved in our day-to-day, they're easier to fall into. So you are right, the older generation will fall a little bit more victim into these, but when they start targeting the day-to-day workers and the people that interact with emails on a day-to-day, it's just easier for them because you fall into a loop where you're just checking your email, trying to go through it, make sure you don't lose any money. So it's important to, again, just do your research and make sure that the links you're clicking on are valid and true to the things that are coming in.
Maybe the biggest question for people out there is, what's the best ways to keep yourself safe and your information?
Yeah, so always call your financial institution if you believe that you have been a victim of fraud. Always make sure that if there's a link that comes in or a phone call from an unknown number, don't answer it, don't interact with it. If there's an email that comes to you from an invoice that was unpaid or an interaction that you don't necessarily recognize, probably don't click on anything on there and just delete it. And if it names your financial institution or any financial institution, reach out to them directly. Make sure that you ask to someone that knows what they're looking at so they can make sure that there's nothing there.
Never bad to double check. Juan, thank you so much for these great reminders and good insights from folks on the ground seeing these in real time. We really appreciate it.
Of course, it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right.